Hey, this is Art from My New Microphone, and if you're anything like me when I started mixing, you may be convinced that there's this secret magical silver bullet plugin out there that will help solve all of your mixing woes and make your mixes sound professional with great ease. Or that you need to use a significant amount of plugins on every track and bus to get your mixes to a very professional level. And I'm here to say that that's just not the case, and that a less is more approach is often a better approach when it comes to mixing. The truth is that every plugin has its downside, some more than others, and will act to color the sound and actually degrade it versus the pure sound of the original track. Sometimes this coloration or degradation is sonically pleasing and can be beneficial to the mix, but many times using plugins or too many plugins can really have a detrimental effect on the mix. Additionally, driving plugins too hard may also degrade the signal and make the mix worse than it was before. So as I stated before, it's often the case that a less is more approach is more appropriate for mixing, at least when it comes to plugins. Let's now discuss a variety of different downsides we are likely to encounter in our plugins. Taking a step back, we can start by looking at analog hardware and the analog circuitry within such hardware that introduces noise into the signals that pass through it. This introduction of noise is an obvious downside to analog hardware and is also present in many plugins that emulate such analog hardware. That is why gain staging was and continues to be such an important part of mixing. That is, feeding the audio devices or plugins with the appropriate signal level so as to not distort them by overloading them, but also to have a strong signal to noise ratio by not driving them too low where the noise will be significant or even overtake the signal level. I actually have a video discussing gain staging in detail, which I will leave a link to in the description box down below. Moving on strictly to plugins, another downside worth considering is the inherent delay or latency that plugins introduce into the mixing session. While many modern digital audio workstations do a fantastic job of compensating for such delays, there may still be latency issues caused by plugins. This is particularly true if we are monitoring during recording in a digital audio workstation that has too many plugins active. Moving on to specific processors and plugins, Equalization has the side effect of causing frequency-dependent phase shift in the audio signal. This frequency-dependent phase shift happens at and around the cutoff frequencies or center frequencies of our EQ bands. This can cause subtle to severe phasing issues, especially in the low end, because the low-end frequencies have longer waveforms that are more affected by any changes in phase. Additionally, too much EQ can sound unnatural, particularly when we are boosting, and especially if we are EQing tracks that play a significant role in the mix. Compression can have the downside of introducing pumping artifacts, messing with our transients, sucking the life out of the mix, or even causing unwanted distortion. Saturation, especially when pushed too far, can cause harshness and distortion in the mix. Time-based effects like delay and reverb can sound grossly unnatural if they are not set up properly to fit the needs of the mix, and they can quickly wash out a mix if their levels are not tamed. It's often the case that these negative side effects are only really audible when we're pushing these processors very hard. However, it's important to be made aware of these side effects to help us understand mixing as a whole. It's also critical to not go around the mix chasing our tails, so to speak, by trying to solve the issues of one plugin with other plugins. This is a losing game and can quickly get out of hand as we add more and more plugins to try to solve the issues, but in reality, we're actually adding more issues to the mix. Rather, if you do have issues happening in your tracks and or buses, try A/Bing the plugins by turning them on and off and listening to whether bypassing the plugin will solve the issue or not. It's sometimes the case that our plugins will do more harm than good, and it's important to be able to test these things throughout the mix. I actually have a video on A/B testing and the 5 most important A/B tests to do throughout the mix. I will leave a link to that video in the description box as well. If it happens that we're messing about with a plugin that is not getting us the results that we want and is actually acting detrimentally in the mix, don't be afraid to get rid of it or try something else instead. So there we go, the dark side of audio plugins that you may or may not have been aware of. If you found this video informative, I'd invite you to hit that like button and to check out the description box below for all other resources at My New Microphone. We are just getting started here on YouTube, and I'd like to thank you for being here. I will also add a few other videos having to do with mixing on this end screen. I would encourage you to check either of these out, and I will see you in the next video.